The unprecedented pace of disruption and uncertainty makes leadership more relevant today than ever before. It is not position or power, but your leadership skills that help you to think in unique, creative ways. When faced with a crisis, a leader is forced to think and make critical decisions. A leader who empowers a team and gives the employees accountability increases the effectiveness of an organization. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Warren Bennett says that leadership is the capacity to turn vision into reality. And Bill Gates says that as we look forward into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. Today, I have the honor of welcoming Sudhir Nandiga. Sudhir is a leader with a global bank in Singapore. He is also an entrepreneur and the founder of Satori Prajna, a gateway for people to onboard and travel this transformative life journey. He has evolved towards living a holistic, balanced lifestyle with the pure intention of assisting and encouraging others to overcome their outward limitations and find their inward wisdom. He believes in making life better and meaningful, but also making this world a better place for all living beings. Welcome, Sudhir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here.
I'd like to begin by asking you, what do you think are 3 important traits that a leader should have to thrive in a disruptive economy?
I think, on top of my head, what comes is firstly clarity, and also the courage to face what comes their way and to have clarity on that. And thirdly, I would say integrity, to have the ability to also delegate and not just take everything as a leader and say that, it's all something that I have to be responsible and accountable for. Yes, certainly. But at the same time, also have the ability to delegate.
Okay. 3 interesting points you brought out: clarity, courage, and the ability to delegate.
Yeah.
We come to a crisis response. When a crisis strikes, what is the leader's response, and what are some steps that he takes when he faces with a crisis?
I would say, in general, it's not just about crisis. In any situation or a scenario, when we are tasked to look into it, and when people are looking forward for answers and solutions or options to work on, the first and foremost thing I would say as a leader is to start understanding what's going on, and not just become a part of the chaos and part of the scenario and then get fully, pulled into it, but try to stay away from it and try to understand what's the situation and what's actually happening out there, and then take actions in a prompt way, not in a hurried way. So there's a difference between taking actions promptly and taking actions in a hurried way. Now, hurried way is going to get us into more chaos and more, lack of thinking and lack of clarity, and it's going to be more mixed up. But being prompt is something where we're going to be able to probe the right questions, ask the right things, meet the right kind of people, understand the problem first, and then, collectively discuss and take the right decision to move to the next stage or get deeper into it and so on. So that, I think, is essential. And also not to, lose composure. So always try to be in control, not allow yourself to get into those emotional situations where you get carried away, or where one gets, too engrossed into the stressful atmosphere that we're getting into at the time of a crisis, because everybody is, kind of literally sweating out there, and they're kind of shaken up. They need that confidence. They need the assurance that, you need to be calm enough and you need to be composed to really understand where they're coming from, and then try to, deliver what can be delivered to them that can possibly find a solution. So yeah, I think these are probably some key principles that I definitely use.
Coming to a team, a leader and his team, how do you keep your team motivated and connected? And how could you offer your support in times of crisis?
I think the first thing is to make sure that we know what our goals are, making sure that the goals are clearly defined along with the responsibilities. So there's nothing. I wouldn't say that there's going to be a perfect world, but at the same time, trying to make it as clear as possible in terms of what are the goals, what are the responsibilities, and try to avoid having things written in between the lines as much as possible for the team. That's one of the core pillar I would believe in. The second thing is to avoid unnecessary meetings. Be very focused, be structured, try not to have too many meetings, too many discussions, which is not really required. So that allows us to have it very crisp and clear with a perfect agenda, and we stick to it, and we just talk what's to be spoken and not get drifted away with many other topics, and creating more content there. That's to also make sure that the team is more productive. The third thing is to encourage criticism in a constructive way. So try to take feedbacks in a constructive way and try to be positive about it. It's all about learning. Everybody learns and everybody evolves through the learning. We become better, we become more efficient and more effective as we start learning. So we have to be always having that ability to learn, irrespective of whoever it is, whether it's the leader or whether it's a part of the team member or whether it's a member in a different team who's collaborating with us. We always have to have that attitude of willing to listen and willing to learn.
Clear goals, focus, constructive feedback, and continuous learning. Nice points there.
Absolutely.
Now we come to, if you look back at your career, what do you think is one of the big challenges that you have faced as a leader or a project manager?
I've faced quite a number. One thing that I can pick up is an area where I've done project management and leadership on certain special investigation projects, which are very sensitive in nature. As we all know, investigations are not a good thing to have in an organization. And when it gets triggered, there's a lot of sensitivity to it in terms of the content, in terms of the topic, in terms of the people that we're getting involved with. And end of the day, it's again people. It's about emotions. It's about attitude towards them. We don't even know if something has gone wrong or not in the first place. And that's the reason why an investigation gets triggered. And leading such projects with absolute confidentiality and absolute respect to each other, and making sure that the team is fully capable of delivering it. And these are projects where I see that we don't really start with a clear end date. We don't start with a clear budget in hand. We don't know what risks that we are getting into. We don't even know, are we really asking the right questions, or are we really looking at the right content, or are we talking to the right people? So there's a lot of uncertainty out there in these kind of projects. And that, I think, is probably some of the big challenging projects that I've handled, which I felt was quite intense, because the pressure is always there. The senior management and the board members are looking at us literally by the clock, by the minute. They want answers. They want to know that we are, really getting the right degree of legitimate evidences and legitimate, closure to whatever we've been reviewing. And we can't go to them without having anything with perfect accuracy, right? And that's where the challenge is. So balancing all this together with the stakeholders, with the people, with the interviewing, panels and the senior management, I think that's, a much more challenging project to handle.
Today, if you see, we have Zoom, like we're chatting now, we have Skype, we have WhatsApp, and we have Slack, and so many tools out there. And the workplace is moving from co-located face-to-face meetings to
Absolutely.
virtual workplace. So how does one lead effectively in such a virtual workplace?
First thing I would say is empowerment. We have to build the belief system within our team. We need to make sure that we trust each other, making sure that we know and we are fully aware of the strengths, the skills, and the capabilities of each member in the team. And for that, it's not just about, the resume or the educational qualification of the individual or the work experience. It's not just all about that. It's also about the individual by him or herself, their character, their own build as to how they've been molded along their life journey, and trying to understand that, I think, is very, very critical, because we need to know where they're coming from, what's their potential, what's their capability, what they can handle and what they can't handle. And this, I think, will enable us to have the belief in terms of handling things remotely. I give something to someone and then I'm not going to talk to that individual for the next 10 days. I have no clue what that person is going to do, how they're going to do it, and what kind of time span they're going to spend on it. It's completely delegated, and that's all about delegation with empowerment and with trust and faith and belief. So these are, I think, the key pillars that we need to have, especially when we are expecting someone to work remotely.
At the beginning of this year, many companies worldwide were taken aback when the COVID-19 pandemic struck. So how does one preempt such a risk and factor it into their risk management plans?
I would say I think we should embed it as part of our everyday culture. We need to be prepared to have surprises every day. It's not that, just because of this crisis that the world was hit with early this year, that we are facing situations where we are seeing unforeseen risks. Risk management, issue management is something that's been with project management and leadership for decades. We've learned a lot through that. Every project, we learn a lot through it, which is also part of the lessons learned exercise that we usually do at the end of a project or end of a leadership initiative and so on. So living each day with an expectation to have surprises and the ability to handle those surprises is key. And when we are able to have that mindset where we are focused and we know that, okay, when we hit a surprise or when we hit a situation, how to deal with it and how are we supposed to go about handling these kind of scenarios, it becomes a lot more easier for us to handle unforeseen events that come our way and manage it in a lot more efficient manner.
What do you see as a future for project managers?
I think being agility is the talk of the day today. Trying to be as flexible as possible, because I think we are living in a world where requirements keep changing literally by the hour. Expectations keep changing literally by the hour as well. So having the ability to balance all this within that given time span, within that given budget and the resources, that's key. So we cannot have the traditional way of doing project management where we say this is the scope, this is what we had agreed day one, and that's what would be delivered in day 100 as per the project timeline. Those days are gone. There are a lot of moving parts, and we need to be able to make it agile enough to embed and incorporate the team to have the flexibility to move around that. So agility is very key.
Yeah, it's the buzzword of the day, being nimble, being agile, and collaborating with your customers much more. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have finally, the last question is that, do you have any words of advice for youngsters who wish to take up leadership roles or a project management role?
I think one important thing that I have learned in my career and in my life journey so far is that I always keep that in my mind, and I try to repeat it every day as well. It's a proverb which says, one is never too young to teach, and one is never too old to learn. So when you have that mindset, you're always in that framework to listen, to hear out, to understand what the other person or the other side of the, wall is trying to tell you. And you have the ability to pick up the aspects that, with the willingness to say that, okay, I'm not too sure what he's trying to say, or I'm not familiar with this topic, or I'm not familiar with this area that we are trying to work on, and I'm willing to understand and willing to learn. So that willingness is there to listen and learn and evolve and grow collectively. The second thing is, many a times I hear people saying, I'm too old for this. I don't think I can do it. That's not true. I think it's end of the day, it's all in the mind, and when we have that mentality that, I'm never too old to learn, we can always evolve. And that's all about growth. That's the core seed that one needs to have to really look forward to growth. Always have that mindset, to have the willingness to accept that doesn't matter if it's a 1-year-old child or a newborn baby that's trying to teach me something. One is never too young to teach, and one is never too old to learn. So when you have that mindset, then growth is all that is.
Sudhir, thank you so much for sharing your perspective, your insights on all those questions that I posed to you. It was a pleasure listening to you, and I'm sure those who listen to this video will also benefit from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me as well. It's an honor to be here, like I said before, and I'm happy to share and happy to learn.